you ever wondered where weekends come from?
Ah, the weekend!
Like, where did that start? It's not that it doesn't make sense. I mean, who doesn't want 2 days off to just relax and hang out and kick it old school? But humans haven't always had a chance to just relax. They haven't always had things like the internet or cell phones or shirts that say things like rise and grind. But the hustle is nothing new. And then the Jews came along and introduced to the world the concept of a dedicated rest day. So why didn't the first Jews roll on Shabbos?
So I don't roll on Shabbos.
And what does Shabbat actually teach us about mindfulness and rest? So if you ask a random passerby what Shabbat means, they'll probably tell you something along the lines of rest, kicking it, you know?
Well, what does resting even mean?
For me, and most people, rest is just hanging out on the couch watching Netflix, but you'd be hard-pressed to find some traditional rabbi to tell you, yes, Shabbat is absolutely the day where you can just binge watch Netflix. So what does Shabbat actually mean? To answer that, we have to go back to the book of Genesis, and specifically to the point where God stops creating, takes a look, says, hey, good job me for all that. And then the Torah says, God shavat mikol melachto, or God ceased to work. It may seem nitpicky to insist that rest and not working are not the same thing. Well, first of all, I am nitpicky, so this is very on brand for me. But second of all, we're talking about God here. This is an all-powerful being beyond the realm of human comprehension. Don't really think God needs to rest. Okay, so God's not resting, he's just not making stuff. So what does that have to do with us? Well, you know the 10 Commandments, pretty important rules for living a moral life. Don't lie, don't murder, don't crush on somebody else's partner, respect your parents even when they're driving you nuts. Well, turns out Shabbat is super important because it shows up in the 10 Commandments, even before all of this don't destroy the moral fabric of society stuff. Seriously. So we're told to remember and observe Shabbat and keep it holy, don't do any work. So let's break that down a bit because there's a lot there. We got 3 positive commandments: remember, observe, and keep holy. Are we told what that means? No. 10 commandments are pretty cryptic there. But we're told don't do any work. No, we mean it. Not you, not your children, not your employees, not your animals, which bold of the Torah to assume that my dog Biggie does anything productive around here to begin with. But what does working actually mean? I mean, this is a legit question. Our definitions of things like work have really evolved over the years. Imagine telling a 1910 garment worker that your work involves sitting on your couch writing YouTube scripts about Shabbat. They'd look at you like you were crazy. You know what I mean? This is Judaism, and we love us some structure. So of course, there's a religious framework for what work means, and we can find a kernel of that back in the creation story. For 6 days, God's making stuff. And at the end of every day, the world's a little bit different. There's no light, and then boom, there's light. There's no stars, and then poof, them stars. There's no water, and then Finding Nemo, only the most terrifying movie if you're a parent, or a human, really, so tragic. And on the 6th day, right before God pauses, he makes just one more thing. That's right, us. And I'm not trying to make it all about me, but the Torah tells us that we're created in God's image, just with all the superpowers, infinite knowledge, and immortality. Who do I complain to about that one? So what does it mean to be made in God's image? Well, it means a lot of things, but for the purposes of Shabbat, it means that we're the only beings that create in the way that God does. And I hope it's not too controversial to say that we humans take the act of creation in a whole new direction. Like God, we create things that permanently change the fabric of society. Skyscrapers, pizza, Spotify. And on Shabbat, we take a step back. We put down writing that great American novel. We just take a beat on our knitting. So that takes care of the negative commandment to not work. But what about the positive parts of the commandment? To remember, observe, and keep holy. Well, I turn to Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, truly one of the coolest modern rabbis and theologians, who said that Shabbat is a palace in time. First of all, amazing. But how do we build that palace? He said, first of all, no business deals, no work, no cooking are allowed inside. Okay, cool. So we've made a moat around the palace, but what does it look like on the inside? So Heschel says, on the inside is where we pray, is where we connect, is where we get closer to each other, to God, where we do the things that really matter, focusing inward, where we don't produce for once. And we take a time to come back to center, to focus on what really matters, our community, ourselves, and God. And so internet, TikTok, phones, work gets tossed in the moat. Because all of that is a distraction. All of that is just keeping us from connecting to ourselves and what really matters. So we go back to the basics and ground ourselves in the present moment without the need to produce. And listen, not to get too preachy, but this is a radical idea in a capitalist society that glorifies the hustle. So making stuff is great. It can be creative, fulfilling, maybe even restorative. But so often it's really none of that. It's just stressful. And so often we attach our sense of worth to what we do. In today's world, our worth is linked to our productivity. But God, who made us in God's image, is not about all of that. God tells us, stop being productive. Take the day off. I did. You don't have to tell me twice. If it's good enough for God, then it's good enough for me. For millennia, Jews have been telling their bosses, sorry, not coming in on Saturday. It's the one day a week that we're looking inward instead of focusing on the outside world. We're building stronger spiritual bonds, social bonds. We're focusing on our family, our community, and what really matters. And it's paid off for us big time. Shabbat makes for tight-knit communities, reflective people, and just an overall understanding that what we do externally does not in any way link to our internal sense of worth. You know what I mean? In the legendary words of Chadam, more than the Jewish people have kept Shabbat, Shabbat has kept the Jewish people. So if you're feeling stressed or anxious or like you just want to slow down, I feel you. I think you should. I think this coming weekend, you should build your own palace in time. Take a break from the doom scrolling, hang out with friends and family, rediscover the glory of napping, or just go outside, get some air. Life is stressful and overwhelming at times, and Shabbat carves out this wonderful dedicated time for us to just step back, take a rest, and connect to what really matters most on the inside.